Joe, can you talk about these last couple months and what they've been like for you, with everything that's gone on, and then how you ended up coming back to Montana State?
Right. It's it's been sort of an emotional roller coaster in a sense. I mean, when you take another job opportunity, which when I talked to Coach Joe the first time, and then some things ended up kind of coming my way, and some things that I wanted to entertain. And one thing that Coach was good about was for me to entertain some of those opportunities that came my way. And ultimately things work itself out for a reason. And me and my family, we're so ecstatic to be a part of what's going on here. Just my few weeks that I've been here, I'm really impressed with the support of the community, the energy around this program, the history of the football tradition here, and it's it's a great opportunity, and I'm excited to really get to work.
And what were those other things that you were entertaining exactly?
Well, there were some things that, some calls that came. I don't want to get specific because that doesn't matter right now. But there were some things that kind of came my way, and some things that I listened to. But ultimately, things worked itself out to where now that I'm here with a guy that I highly admire, highly respect, and just meeting the rest of the staff. I think we have great people around this program, a program that is really on the rise. One thing that I say to guys and even recruits, this thing has a great tradition and foundation, and we're trying to just come in here and turn this flicker back into a flame.
Coach Joe, what do you anticipate working for him will be like?
Well, I worked with him at the University of Washington, and so he was a coach on my senior team when I was a senior at Boise State, and so I anticipate a guy who's full of energy like myself, somebody that's passionate. I think he's surrounded himself with guys like himself. I think all of us are passionate about the game of football, teaching the game of football, and really holding these kids accountable, and keeping those guys playing at championship standards and living that way on and off the field as well. So I anticipate a great, great head coach who's understanding, who knows what it's like to be an assistant, and is going to let his guys coach, and ultimately he's going to lead us to where we need to get to.
The Big Sky, like a lot of football around the country, has become so pass happy the last few years. How do you go about when you start to think about defending space and defending the pass? Where do you?
Well, ultimately, my goal just coming in is really to be able to establish a foundation of movement with the secondary, regardless of what the schemes are, regardless of what we're doing schematically. There's an efficient way that we need to move defensively in the secondary, and so that's one of the things that I got to get done first and foremost, to make sure that all of our movements are efficient and explosive and effective, and guys understand the why also. And then once we get into the scheme, first of all, what we do, getting a clear understanding of what our responsibilities are, I'm going to be able to have the entire secondary, so they got to know the entire picture and the big picture, not just what their personal responsibilities are, but understanding where their help is, where they can be aggressive on certain things, because they understand what the next guy in the secondary is able to do, and we're able to communicate and talk about different things. And then once we have an understanding of what we do fundamentally, what we do defensively with our scheme, then we can start worrying about different offenses and the things that they're trying to do to try to attack us. And so it is pass happy. A lot of the schemes are the same. Football is universal, from the Big Sky to the NFL. A lot of teams are pretty much doing the same thing when you talk about scheme in the passing game. And so it's just about building an understanding of our fundamental movement, and then graduating that to trying to dictate offensively what those guys are trying to do to us, and take advantage of our weaknesses, so we make that our strength.
So, understanding the big picture, do you like this? Last year they had a coach coaching corners and a coach coaching safeties. You prefer?
I prefer them all to be in the same room, and I think after the experience that I had at Washington, and even as a player when I was playing at Boise State, I played in a system where you had a corners and safeties guy, and I played in a system where you have a secondary guy. And one thing that I believe is that is a full unit. They have to be able to see the same picture, build the same chemistry from the classroom to on the field, and to be able to see the same thing and hear the same coaching points, and having the corner listen to the safety's coaching points and understanding, okay, that's where my help is going to be, or safety knowing where the corner's fit is within the defensive scheme. I think that's important. Some people have different philosophies, and that's fine. It works in certain ways. And, just how I see it, I see the secondary just as equal as playing in unison like the offensive line. I don't think you can have the tackles in one room and the guards and centers in the other and expect them to play in unison. I think it makes perfect sense in the secondary where everybody's got to see the big picture so guys know where to fit.
You were a second-round NFL draft pick, is that
Mhm.
right? Maybe just walk us through sort of how it kind of worked for you in the pros and the NFL, and when you knew that you wanted to get into coaching.
Well, that's an interesting story. I mean, when I got drafted, I was, like I said, I was a second-round draft pick, and I was with the Detroit Lions. And, you know, just like anybody who's getting into the NFL, especially with the opportunity that I had as a high-round draft pick, you know, you want to play for a long time. You feel like you have a lot of, not necessarily a lot of time, but you have the opportunity to develop, unlike some guys who've taken another route, low-round draft pick, you know, undrafted guys. And so my second year in the league, I ended up suffering a big neck injury where I herniated a disc and fractured a vertebrae. And that really took the course of my career to a new direction. Once I got traded from that team, once the coaching staff changed, and then, you know, kind of during my last 3 years in the league, I kind of bounced around, did the free agent thing, get signed, get cut, try to catch on with another team. You know, but it didn't necessarily work itself out that way. When I knew I wanted to get into coaching, is when I volunteered at my high school in Rancho Cucamonga, California, and not even necessarily thinking that this was something that I wanted to do for a long time, but just the experience. And at the same time, I was really trying to stay in shape and get on with the team. And kind of an interesting story is when I knew that I wanted to coach was when I had a tryout with the Dallas Cowboys, and I flew out there on a Thursday, and the workout was on a Friday. But yeah, we had a very important league game at Rancho Cucamonga that Friday night, and usually how that stuff goes is you go work out, and if they're going to sign you, they're going to keep you there. And so the whole time as I'm working out, well, not as I'm working out, but the whole time that I'm kind of wading through the whole process of if they're going to sign me or not, the only thing that I kept thinking about is, you know, okay, what if this team comes out and trips and they put their receiver to the backside? How are we going to adjust? And so as I'm not even thinking about getting signed at that point. And so when I'm on the plane coming back home, I end up going straight to the airport to the high school game and you know, coaching my butt off and end up getting a win. And that's when I knew it was like, you know what, if I don't get another call, then this is exactly what I want to do. And then that's when I got into kind of pursuing graduate assistant positions and ended up at Arkansas State and at Washington and then at Indiana State. And you know, now I'm in front of you guys today as a DB coach.
In terms of the position group, last year I think a big issue was lack of depth. In the recruiting process right now, are you in Coach Choate's ear to try and get that resolved?
Well, that's been something that we've kind of identified through our recruiting, is just making sure that we get some guys in the secondary, specifically guys that can cover. You know, I think you have to have that. If you want to be a good defense, you got to have guys who can cover some grass, whether they're at corner or safety, or hey, if we want to put in more defensive backs and nickel, you got to have guys. And so we've identified that. We've targeted some guys, and we've got some guys that we feel pretty good about if they want to make the decision to become Bobcats.
Just building off that, the secondary is a group that went through its tough stretches last year. Just as a coach, how do you start building confidence mentally with that group?
Well, ultimately, like I said before, it becomes from my responsibility to build the foundation of how we move. And so at that point, those guys will get a clear understanding of what it looks like to move efficiently in the secondary. You know, just watching a little bit of film that I have watched, you know, there's been a lot of things that are very fixable, and it just has to do with just details in our fundamentals. And that's to nobody's fault. It's just a matter of continuing to coach it up, be consistent, hold them accountable, always making sure that we're teaching in the finest details, because those are the things that are going to make a difference between a ball that's completed for a first down versus an incompletion on a pass breakup, or a pass breakup versus an interception. You know, those efficient movements and those guys understanding their body position, their footwork, what foot to plant off of, what foot to drive off of, and that's one of those things that I learned just playing at the highest level, because there's no room for mistakes. I mean, you got guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, and those guys are making very accurate throws, and you have no chance to make an errant move because that ball's going to be there on the money. Now, I don't anticipate necessarily playing those guys on Saturday in Bobcat Stadium, but ultimately it goes down to building a foundation of movement. And then, as those guys are able to demonstrate the ability to do so, then they gain the confidence that they need to play the position.
You talked about your journey the last couple of months, the last few weeks recruiting since you've been here. Can you tell us, been in California, and then also if that's sort of where you are expected to be recruiting to in the future?
Well, I don't know exactly what our areas are going to be specifically. I think, you know, once we kind of came in, we were, I wouldn't say we're scrambling because that sounds like such a bad word, like we don't have a plan, but, you know, we identified some guys. I identified some guys. I'm a West Coast guy from Rancho Cucamonga. I have ties in the Southern California area. I did go out there just to go, obviously, look for the things that we need. So I don't know going forward. I know that, you know, I personally don't care where they come from. If they can play and they can help us win, then, you know, I'm not necessarily a guy that's solely, you know, I just want guys out of my area. I want guys that are going to help us win. And so I don't know where this is going to go, but I know if we are in need of defensive backs, then I'm going to go identify defensive backs and go recruit them.
Is it more difficult when you're in a period of transition like you guys are, to new staff, when you're out on the recruiting trail?
Well, it's a little bit different, obviously, with us being a new staff and all the things that need to get done. Just being a part of a new situation, whether you're recruiting your own players that you have here currently, and then also at the same time you're going to recruit other players who you want to be a part of your team, and so it does create some difficulty. But ultimately, once we get in the flow of things, and once we're able to have a full year of being a staff and talking about these things, when the next cycle goes around, when we get to next year, it makes things a lot easier. But I think everybody's done a really good job of just working hard, and Coach Cho's put us in a great position to be able to identify some guys that we feel pretty good about, and you know, just really recruit them and get those guys to be Bobcats.
You mentioned your time at Washington.
You know, I'm very impressed. Coming from the University of Washington, and I was at Indiana State last year, I was very impressed with the FCS quality of football. You know, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was just like somebody else who never, you know, I played at Boise State. I played basically at the FBS level. And then you always hear about certain guys, you know, coming through the draft or in the NFL who played at FCS schools and had a great amount of success in their careers, whether it be collegiate or professionally. But being a part of it and actually being able to study it and actually being able to prepare for it for a year, I was very impressed with the level of football that's here. And it's not just about guys who transfer down and play at this level. It's really guys who've been recruited at those schools, who've developed at those schools, and have made themselves big-time players and even big-time prospects in the NFL. You know, one of the guys, I mean, specifically that I was impressed with was Carson Wentz. You know, I prepared for him when I was at Indiana State against North Dakota State, and you know, I was very impressed with that guy. Him being a top draft pick is not a surprise to me because I saw it. And that's a guy who was, you know, recruited at that level and developed at that level. And so, you know, that's one thing that I preach to guys, you know, on the recruiting trail, because a lot of kids don't look at it like that. They don't look at the big picture, and it doesn't matter your path. It matters you getting with good coaches, being able to develop at those schools, at those universities, in those programs. And if you want to achieve that dream and you have the opportunity to, you can do that at the FCS level as well. You look at Josh Norman, who's playing in the Super Bowl.
Do you think that you playing at a high level gives you more clout or more credit when you're coaching your guys?
I think naturally, just the fact that I'm an NFL player and former NFL player rather, and a lot of those kids want to do the things that I was able to accomplish. And so it does somewhat give me some instant credibility with those guys, but that isn't something that I really lean on. You know, my job is to be a great teacher, a great coach, a guy that's supportive, a guy that, you know, cares about them more as a person than a player. And so there's a lot of things that I need to do for me to be able to continue to have that respect and that credibility amongst that room, amongst that individual. Yeah, because I played in the NFL, I come in a room and more than likely they're going to listen, but they can tune me out if I don't give them the tools to be successful on the football field and off.
Heavy defensive influence on the staff, your former defensive coordinator as well as another one, as well as Coach Cho having so much defensive background. How do you think that'll all meld together with you guys?
I think it's going to be great. I think we have he's did a great job putting together guys, good coaches who are passionate about the game, passionate about the things that they've experienced and know, but very low ego guys. You know, we're getting together for the first time really this week after a long haul recruiting and really getting a feel for each other defensively. And it's a great deal because we get to start from scratch. You know, we get to take all the things that we've known and we've experienced and things like that, and kind of get a feel for our personnel and the things that we can do with our personnel and putting those guys into positions to be successful. So I think it's going to be great. It's something that I'm continuing to look forward to every single day, and then ultimately it's going to result into hopefully a positive product.
Wednesday is signing day. As a staff, from the staff's perspective, how important is that day, and how big of a relief is it when those letters start coming in?
Well, it's important. I mean, recruiting is the lifeblood of a program, and so, the guys that we have identified as guys that we feel very strongly about as far as bringing into our program, not just as players but as people. It's very important. It's a very important day for every university, because that's your future that you're bringing in, and so, obviously it's a relief when it's over, but it's a never-ending cycle. I mean, you're kind of going for 2017, and obviously this is something that's going to be ongoing throughout the most part. But I think the biggest relief is now that we're off the road and now we can kind of get this done. We can be with our guys that are here and really put the focus on them, building that relationship, building that culture, and obviously being able to prepare for spring ball and all the things going forward. So, it's a very important time, but it's equally, if not more important, for us to be able to recruit our own players and be able to establish the things that we need to get done as a team.